This video starts by showing dance students crafting a tensegrity model. Here we work with straws and elastics to craft the model. The tensegrity model is used to think about bodies as biotensegrity systems. The model sits in contrast to the biomechanical model of the body and one championed by researchers of fascia. The mechanistic model of the body is where bones are imagined to be stacked on top of one another like a pile of bricks, and the muscles and connective tissues are thought to control them like rigging in a sailing ship. Each joint is considered in isolation from others. A biotensegrity model represents a significant conceptual shift from the view that our bones are the load-bearing structure in our bodies like the framing of a house, to one where they are floating within the tensional matrix of the fascia and muscle. It highlights the dynamic relational architecture of the body where parts and wholes are always in relation, listening and peculiarly sensitive to the modification of the other. We use this model in a dance studio practice as a research laboratory to think about and move with the emerging biological material called fascia. In asking what the models can do, the focus shifts to how models can be productive, literally putting the dancer into motion, rather than having to be a true representation of the body. Just as scientists are continually reconfigured by their instruments and data within responsive media, dancers are reconfigured by the way they imagine their body minds. Fascia, or connective tissue, is a viscous goop that connects, divides, and slides among muscles, organs, skin, and cells. It is found to be active, intelligent, communicative, and a sensory organ, sometimes three, sometimes many, sometimes one, liquid, solid, and mucus, and still in a pre-paradigm state. Within our fascia research movement lab, we crafted scores as a kind of method to think with different emerging models. Scoring as method is a way to think with Spinoza's question, we don't know yet what a body can do. Within practices research, choreographers and other performers learn through iterative exploration with their bodies. Scoring takes ideas and images and instead of figuring out what they mean, sets up exercises that examines the problem or concern. In this case, fascia, so that people can collaboratively work with it in motion together. Scores can be thought of as a loose set of instructions that guides a group of people to interact with each other. Because the instructions don't dictate everything that might emerge, and the time between instructions changes, participants become quite mindful of how they are drawn to move or talk or pay attention in some ways and not others, and how they make choices about how to follow the rules or not. All of these are forms of attention to habits of thought, speech, and action, and in attending to habits, one often experiences new ways of not being habitual. Within this video, we think about the modes of attention that emerged in scoring the tensegrity model in three different locations. The first one in a fascia movement research lab in Humboldt State University. The second one was with Nita Little and her dance ensemble within Berkeley, California. And the third one was in the Tenderloin National Forest during a rehearsal with the residents of the single occupancy hotels in San Francisco. The score was first created in relation to the tensegrity model in Humboldt. The group that was working on the score wrote it as the following. 1. In a group of 5, stand in a circle without touching. 2. Move towards each other, weaving hands around each other. Each person grabs a piece of clothing or body part such as shoulder, elbow, hand, or wrist from somebody else. Attend to each other. All together fall slightly off balance, away from each other. This is part 3, where the group snaps into kind of a tensional compressional unit that create lines of tension and compression throughout the shared structure. And in number 4, play with one person moving and notice what happens to the structure or to the rest of the group. One element that was foregrounded and humble was the dancer's ability to attend to the layers of sliding and gliding and sticking as they held on to different pieces of clothing. A pant leg, the button of a shirt, the cuff of a sleeve, or a part of the body, such as a hand or ankle. Someone holding a cotton sweater would notice it would slide easily over a synthetic t-shirt underneath, whereas jean materials would stick on the skin. This ability of the material to stick or slide or create friction allowed dancers to move in particular directions and at particular speeds and not others. The ability of layers to glide or stick is of great concern for fascia researchers, and one that links scientists, clinicians, and movement practitioners. The ability for the fascia layers to glide in our movement, including at the joints, so that they are frictionless between layers of the skin and around the organs, so that one can move without compromising them. Tissues slide and morph to facilitate movement, and in doing so affect how force is transmitted throughout the fascia layers. More slide equals more freedom in movement. Friction often signifies restriction or injury and an increase in chronic pain. In the second site, the dance studio in Berkeley, Nita Little asked the dancers working in the ensemble to think with a tensegrity model and extend its possibilities to the body-mind and what she calls the tactility of attention. Attentional tensegrity is a structure formed when multiple body-minds are held together through a network of mutually acting attentional bonds. Its properties include spatial flexibility, productive difference of independent actors, and a kind of knowledge exchange within the system so that changing one changes all. To understand this last property, one must continue to recognize attention as the product of the embodied mind. Not all change is visible, especially to the untrained eye or untrained attender. A positional change of one may or may not produce an immediate positional change of all. Yet there is an immediate change throughout the whole system on the level of attention. Nita asks the dancers to notice your partner's attention to you. Notice they're noticing you. When working in partners, you then extend this to a group. Attentional tensegrity is the result of the tactile presence being articulated through an expansive and extensive sense of embodiment. It is a refusal to limit the felt body-mind to its flesh form. Acting spatially, the body-mind becomes a flexible form, limited by skills of attentional concentration and engagement. Under certain conditions, embodied attention has cohesive properties that form attentional bonds that can move body-minds. Nita's bioattentional tensegrity model is continuous with our simple tensegrity models by thinking with attention to extend it spatially, thus incorporating yet another scale, one that coordinates inter- or intrapersonally, and one that thinks in group dancing systems. On this extended scale, biological forms are critical to the functioning of attentional forms, and neither can be understood separately. Slide, glide, and friction can be found across bodies and clothing, but also noticed within group attentional practices. The third site where this tensional score was reenacted was in the Tenderloin area of San Francisco. The score was shared with the residents of the Tenderloin as part of a site-based rehearsal process called RACE. Many of the residents are poor people of color living in affordable housing units in an area of San Francisco under immense pressure from the surrounding gentrification process. Leroy, a longtime resident of the Tenderloin and elder of the dancers, pointed out that he was not so much interested in attending to the slide, glide, and friction found in fascia, but was more interested in attending to the person who was in a tight space. He asked the group to attend to this person at any given moment. Leroy's attention practice worked against capitalistic flows inherent in what's called bio-value, or the ability to attend to what is going to grow more wealth, individual accumulation, or individual freedom and movement. He asks us to attend to who is caught in the flow of any particular moment. Leroy highlights that bodies are always caught in painful and contradictory matrices of support and negation, and these very contradictions can impact the glide and friction inherent in individual bodies. In this dance, instead of asking us how I or one person can be more free in their movement, you look around and train yourself to continuously ask, who is the least free here? It is a different question which results in different modes of being in relation and might result in a different kind of accumulation of value. In this score, we attended to the shifting constraints that improvisers negotiate. We came to sense into how one's social and historical positions in the world affects one's ability to move both literally and figuratively, and how one contributes to the constraints on bodies that one is in relation to. Dance theorist Daniel Goldman writes that to ignore the constraints that improvisers encounter is not only to deny improvisation's most significant power as full-bodied critical engagement in the world, one that is characterized by both flexibility and perpetual readiness. Leroy was training us to be ready to not the individual freedom, but how the group shapes the particular freedom of any one individual.